This is the You, Me, and BTC podcast.
Cryptocurrency decrypted.
Welcome to episode 80. For the first half of today's show, we're chatting with Robert Allen, the founder of COINCUBE. The new crypto service uses a special algorithm to trade your Bitcoin for profit. Mr. Allen will explain how it works, how it's actually helpful for the Bitcoin market, and more. Robert also has experience in the gold industry, which will lead to an interesting discussion about the crazy possibility that cryptocurrency could someday displace precious metals. Then after that, I'll sit down with Stefan, the protocol architect for Trest. He'll share how the new cryptocurrency is different than Bitcoin and possibly more cost-effective. The network does not rely on traditional mining, so Stefan will explain what encourages nodes to validate transactions even when there's no monetary incentive. Your hosts today are Tim Baker, John Stewart, and myself, Daniel Brown. Here we go. Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of You, Me, and BTC. This will be episode 80, which I guess is exciting because it's a multiple of 10. Somehow that makes numbers special. So we're glad to have you with us. Super excited. I am Daniel Brown, and I'm here with
Tim Baker
and John Stewart.
And we also have a really special guest with us today, the founder of COINCUBE.io, and I could tell you about it, but I'll let him do it in a moment. This is Mr. Robert Allen. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So I'll just start with that. Can you just tell us what COINCUBE is and how it works?
Sure. So maybe to give sort of a little bit of a backstory as to sort of the impetus for developing the app. I worked in finance for about 4 years in precious metals. I actually worked for a guy named Peter Schiff at Bureau Pacific Metals. I was one of the guys over there. And before I left, I was the director of business development and was actually pretty integral in getting them to accept Bitcoin. So that was a really exciting time, in my kind of tenure at that company. But anyway, so, I discovered Bitcoin. I've been a trader, been interested in, trading stocks and other things for a long time, invested in metals. And when I realized that Bitcoin was something that I wanted to be invested in, I guess the next question for me was, how best can I be invested in Bitcoin, but also be smart about it, realizing how volatile the market tends to be. It's a very small market. There's, very little liquidity still. We're at around maybe 3.5 billion in that range.
Right.
So it's extremely small market, and that means that it tends to be really choppy, and it's quite a bit smaller than any market I'd ever traded before. And so I had also been getting more and more interested in technical analysis and algorithmic trading, and so I decided to take my interest in Bitcoin and pair it with my interest in trading. So I developed an algorithm in Python and started using it to trade my own account. Tested it with data back into 2011. So I had quite a bit of market data to play with, and developed a strategy that essentially attempts to follow the dominant market trend. And so the algorithm basically breaks the market up into bullish, bearish, or neutral. And then depending on that designation, the algorithm will trade differently. So if it's a neutral market, the algorithm always will look for what would be considered like a cyclical kind of overbought, oversold sort of situation. So money flow indicator, RSI, those sorts of indicators are used to essentially say, we've been in a range, we're at the top of a range now, and so we're going to sell. Now, the danger, of course, is if you do that, and then the market continues to go up, you had a lot of trouble. And so
Right.
no system is perfect, but that's why I designed the algorithm to look to first, split the market into these different trends and then to try to follow those. So if it's a bullish or bearish trend, it'll be either sitting in Bitcoin if it's bullish or sitting in US dollars if it's bearish. And, like any trading system, it's not going to work 100% of the time. So you need to include stop losses and you need to have a really smart approach to how you use the system. But, so I built those elements into it as well. But we're real excited about it. And the performance has been very good so far. I started trading it in November with a test account. I have all the data up on COINCUBE.io so you can see the performance, but it's done really well. Basically, it sold us out into dollars at about, I think, 375 or so. The price kept falling. We were holding in dollars until pretty recently. Now we had a few, sort of head fakes, and that tends to happen. The market can sometimes be hard to call correctly, and so we had some situations where it looked like we had a breakout and then it ended up not being so. And so there's a few head fakes in there where there's small losses, but the general idea there is as long as you cut your losses pretty early and you don't run with those, and then you do pick some good trades, you can do really well. And so we're excited about it. I think the performance right now is around, in Bitcoin terms, we're up about 46%. In dollar terms, it's only up about 6%, but we just bought in recently. And, my thinking would be that we'll see a pretty big rally over the next few months here as we start to turn the corner on this bear market. So, really the idea was I wanted to develop a system for myself so that I could be sober about trading and so that I wouldn't, be drawn by my emotion to do things ultimately against my best interest as a trader. So it trades very infrequently. It's once every 30 to 40 days is typically the distance between a trade and the next one. And it's following mostly the 24-hour candle. So we're really looking for the big market trends and trying to follow those. And so that's the initial offering for COINCUBE.io. That's the algorithm that's running right now. We're in beta. So basically the idea is if a user or if someone is interested in becoming a user and benefiting from the algorithm, they can connect their trading account using API keys. So we currently support Bitfinex, Bitstamp, Coinbase, and CoinSetter. So if you have an account with any of those exchanges, you can go into your account there, create an API key, make sure that it doesn't allow withdrawal. I think there may be one of those exchanges that does allow that. I believe it's Bitstamp. So obviously you don't want to do that because there's slight danger that, if we were hacked or something happened, we don't store those keys in plain text. But nonetheless, you just want to be smart about that sort of thing. So, but anyway, you get the API key and connect that into your COINCUBE account. And then when our algorithm makes trades, it will send those trade instructions to your account for you. Obviously, we want to make money like anyone. So we're looking to, right now, our sort of fee structure is a quarter of any Bitcoin gains. So if the dollar value goes up a ton, we wouldn't charge at all for that. You're only going to be charged if, as it continues to trade over the course of however many months, your Bitcoin value, the total Bitcoin in your account would need to increase. So actually, in the last 6 months, if you'd started trading in November, you would owe us a little bit of Bitcoin for the trading that's happened. But that's the basic idea. I mean, we really wanted to make an app that was pretty easy to use and kind of fun. And I really think one of the things that I love so much about Bitcoin is that we're going to see financial tools that are actually pleasurable to use in our lifetime. And that's, unheard of in today's banking world. It's just a nightmare everywhere you go. There's fees and problems, and it's just a really crappy system. And I've been kind of going on and on about it, but that's sort of the overview, I guess.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think One of my favorite things when I first looked at your website, I like the idea of a longer term speculation and trading and stuff, because a lot of people say like day trading and rapid trading is a little too risky. You just never know. And it's a lot of work too to keep track of all that. So I don't know. I like you kind of cut it down the middle, not necessarily long term, like years and stuff, but yeah, sure. Let's trade a little bit and see what we can do. So I do think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you. And that's really the sort of user I'm going for, is someone who's not comfortable trying to day trade. That's really hard to do. Some people do it and make money, but it really is a job, and you really have to put some time in to learn how to do it. And it can be very risky. You can have a good streak and think that all of your decisions are great and then get wiped out. It happens all the time. So yeah, I mean, I wanted for myself to be exposed to Bitcoin, to have, to own Bitcoin, but also, to not get wiped out if there are big price drops. In the last 6 months, the last more than that, the last year or so, we've basically been in a long-term bear market. So yeah, so I wanted to develop something that people could, put some Bitcoin to work, hopefully grow some of that wealth, not have to worry about it all the time. And I think in general, it's easier to trade, at least in my experience, it's easier to trade on the longer term trends. It seems that the shorter the candle that you're looking at, oftentimes the harder it is to make good decisions. And so that's why we, at least for this algorithm, we're looking at sort of those longer term periods. We do have the intention to add some other algorithms eventually. So, the idea would be that we would have a platform where users could, depending on their risk tolerance and their objectives as an investor, they could use, the current wave algorithm, or maybe there would be another one that would be a little bit more frequent. And we're currently, doing a lot of work in developing algorithms and testing the current algorithm as well, which I'm excited. We're going to be releasing quite a bit of information, basically just looking at risk analysis and doing some different things with Monte Carlo simulations to essentially, when we want to validate, we see that the algorithm has been working. I think I understand why it works, but when you have real data backing, if you can run, say 10,000 simulations with the Monte Carlo simulator, and you've simulated 10,000 random walk data sets, you can do a lot with that sort of approach. And so, without getting into all the nitty gritty of it, the basic idea is, we're excited to take what we have and continue to refine it, and hopefully offer users, some new features in the future. We've also considered looking at other maybe adding a couple altcoins as well. So that's not high priority, but I would expect maybe within the next year, we would, give users the option to say, hey, I would like to trade, maybe Litecoin or Dash, or, something like that, something that seems to have a little bit of staying power. And yeah.
I got to say that the whole idea of simulation and stuff, this has nothing really to do with Bitcoin, but it's just cool to me because I'm a computer scientist, and that's stuff I've dealt with a decent amount. So not really much to say other than I think that's a cool thing to think about. So
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
So a lot of people within Bitcoin seem to have gotten like a little bit less enamored of trading and trying to make money off of it. And a lot of people see that almost as something that's keeping the currency from becoming stable and keeping it from becoming mainstream and becoming useful for everyday life. Do you see that as a problem, or do you think that being able to trade like this doesn't really cause those issues that people says it does?
Yeah, I think that really what that comes down to is a lack of understanding of how markets work. I mean, there tends to be in Bitcoin more expertise probably in computer science and less interest or expertise in finance and financial markets. And that's changing. I think sort of the second wave that we're seeing, come into Bitcoin is, you have quite a bit of interest from Wall Street and some from more sort of traditional finance. I mean, I guess you could kind of put me in that category to a certain degree as well. But, to answer your question, So I would say the volatility of a market is a function of its size. It's not, well, it's just a bunch of greedy people who are trading and somehow that's creating the volatility. I would say it's actually the opposite. When you have a very thinly traded market, you're going to have a lot of volatility, because if you want to move any substantial amount of money in Bitcoin and the order book is very small, you're going to push the price one way or the other when you try to get in or get out. And so, really, and maybe this is counter to how some people understand markets, or again, maybe they haven't, kind of studied these things enough, but we need liquidity in Bitcoin. And basically that means we need people to trade it. The more people that are actually trading Bitcoin and bringing capital to the market to engage in trade, the more stable the market will become. And, if you could picture like a pond, if you go jump off a diving board into, a pool, you're going to have a big splash. A pond, you might be a little bit less of a splash. If you jump into the ocean, there's going to be almost no splash at all. And that's because of the size of that body of water. And so if you think about an individual trader in that sort of, if you can kind of picture that and imagine you're getting in or getting out of the market and you're jumping in or jumping out, you're going to do a lot less in terms of moving the market if the market is very big. I mean, that's why U.S. Treasuries are extremely stable market, because it's such a huge market cap. Yeah. So anyway, I think it's exciting to come to Bitcoin to trade because of the volatility. That's why a lot of traders are interested in it. And I think you're right to a certain degree that maybe some of the excitement about trading has died down, although I kind of think that's more the hype bubble and the fact that certain people were getting in just because the price was rising, maybe more than anything else. And, to trade effectively, you don't need the market you don't need the price to move up. You can make money in a bear market if you trade correctly. So, for traders, it's not really about the direction of the market. Although I'm also very bullish for Bitcoin long term. I think talk of 10,000, 100,000, a million is not insane. I think those numbers, depending on how things play out, we'll likely see those numbers in our lifetime. But for now, the volatility is wonderful. It's like a beacon, and it's basically saying, it's an inefficiency in the market. The market's saying we need liquidity, and if you come and provide liquidity, we're going to pay you Bitcoin. And so, if you think about it in that way, it's sort of like, miners are bringing something to the market. They're providing a service. And I would argue that traders are actually doing a very similar thing.
I think that's a pretty cool way to look at things. I mean, yeah, it definitely seems like people trading is going to help out the market, because if the price is going up, then they're going to sell and sort of balance that out. If the price is going down, they're going to buy and sort of balance that out. So I think that's a good way to look at things. And also, just for me, I'm a freedom-minded person. And I really like money. So if somebody sees a way to make money in the market, then just go for it. I think it's a cool thing to do. So
yeah, I mean, and I would add to that. I think some of the feeling that comes from questions such as the one from, was it Daniel?
I asked the last question, John.
I'm sorry. I got confused for a second who I heard.
It doesn't matter. They're just voices. Just go.
Disembodied voices. No, but what I was going to say was, I think it's understandable that finance has gotten a bad name in for a lot of people, and I totally agree with a lot of those sentiments and the frustrations, because a lot of people are making money on Wall Street not because they're really providing a service, but because they're actually ripping people off. And you look at things like high frequency trading, and not all of it is bad. I'm not saying that, but when you're moving a server into, so you can be closer. I mean, they're buying up real estate so they can get just a few feet closer to the exchange, so they can beat out other people, and where they basically are they're front running oftentimes they're front running their own clients. I mean, things like that are just really skeezy. And a lot of that stuff goes on. And so, Wall Street has a bad name for a reason. But, when you start, and a lot of that's cronyism. That's, in my opinion, it's government, going in and setting up regulations that essentially protect the companies that are already entrenched and already in power, and that has a lot less to do with trading or the way that markets should function, and it has a lot more to do with cronyism and just basically, yeah, I mean, cronyism, I guess, is the best word for it.
All right, Tim, you want to grab the personal story?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Robert, we like to ask any guests we have on for a personal story you have from Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. It can be anything like a time you got scammed, someone you met, someone famous you met, just anything like that, really.
Yeah, it's just kind of we just do it for fun. Any cool story in your time in the space?
Well, so I went up to the Porcupine Freedom Festival in 2011, and it was my first and only time visiting that event. But I remember Bitcoin. I believe it was probably the first time that I was introduced to it. And no offense to anyone who goes to Porcupine, because overall I thought it was a great event, but it was a little overwhelming for me in some regards. It kind of felt maybe it was a little more like hippie than I kind of expected. And I've actually kind of moved more and more in that direction, so I'm not shitting on anyone for being a hippie, but it wasn't quite the vibe I expected. And I just remember, these people using this weird, internet money, and I just couldn't get my head around it. And up until Bitcoin, we've never seen digital scarcity. I had never seen it. In history, it never occurred. And so that concept, didn't exist in my mind, and it was just very bizarre. But, I remember people, paying for things and using it. And unfortunately, like a lot of folks, I kind of just laughed it off and went back to buying and selling gold and silver. Wish I had, paid a little more attention at that point, because that would have been a good time to buy. But then it took me a few years, and I finally started hearing about it again in early 2013. And then, I read the white paper eventually and started digging deeper and deeper. And I think the one thing that has really drawn me to, well, many things, but one thing that sticks out in my mind with Bitcoin is just that I do see a really diverse community of people, which I think is really beautiful to behold. When you have people coming from different ends of the political spectrum, different ends of the socioeconomic spectrum. You have engineers, obviously a lot of computer programmers and enthusiasts in that regard. And then you have people in finance, and you have, sort of libertarian types, anarchists, just sort of like tech junkies. I mean, it's amazing to see the diversity. And I think that is one of the reasons why I'm so confident that Bitcoin is going to be a huge game changer for the world, because there's just so many people that are coming to it for different reasons. But, it's an open source protocol, and very much like TCP/IP or something like that. And I think when that realization finally clicked, it made a lot of sense. And so I'm just, bottom line for me is I'm excited to try to be a part of what I see as a huge step in the evolution of humanity to a better way of being human, a better way of dealing with the transfer of value. And if we can get the government out of money, I think that's a beautiful thing. I think the separation of church and state is, without a doubt, one of the most important moments in human history. And I think Bitcoin has the potential to, bring the separation of money and state and make that a reality. And I think that's just so exciting. So yeah, I'm one of the crazy ones, kind of early on here. I think we're all still very early, in the evolution of Bitcoin, but it's so exciting to be a part of it. So thank you for taking the time to speak with me.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, that's definitely the kind of world-changing, revolutionary stuff we hope to see in the future. But I mean, it's just, we'll have to see how it all goes. I actually do, before we wrap up, I want to ask, just for fun, any quick thoughts? Because I know you mentioned precious metals, and you have a little history there. Any quick thoughts on the price? What might be going on there? I know it's been low for quite a while. Anything you feel like sharing, saying?
Sure. Yeah, I really got to a point in I guess my understanding of the precious metals market that I had to move on because I see, and it really, much of it comes to Bitcoin. If Bitcoin didn't exist, there's a good chance that I might still be working with precious metals. But fundamentally, the problem that I see is that you have most of the gold on the planet is held and controlled by central banks, and much of it is it's very opaque. So we don't know where the gold is. There's a lot of rehypothecation, and basically what that means is someone lent some gold to a bank, and that bank lent that gold to another bank, and then that bank probably lent the gold to another and another. So you have kind of as I think Patrick Byrne said, it's like turtles all the way down. That famous quote. I'll never forget about that. But I thought that was hilarious. But it really is. It's just this rabbit hole of just craziness. And so I think gold as a concept of money and as sort of it is our heritage. We see gold and we realize that it was a better way to keep track of debts, basically, of who owes who what. And we used that for a long time. In the United States, prospered, I think, to a large degree because we had sound money, because we had a gold standard. When we lost that in 1913, and then finally, officially and totally in 1971, you can see the growth of the government, the growth of the state, the increase in warfare, this sort of perpetual warfare, welfare kind of system. And I think a lot of it grows out of the debasement of money and the end of the gold standard. So at its core, I love gold. I love it as a concept. I just think, unfortunately, that it has been kind of wrestled away from the general population. And then I guess the other side of that is Bitcoin. And so, while I love gold, I see Bitcoin as providing all of the benefits of gold, plus several, very attractive additional benefits, like the ability to send it instantaneously across the planet for almost nothing. Dealing when I was a precious metals broker, there are a lot of costs involved in moving the metals, insuring, shipping, storing, and so that really is cumbersome, and all of those layers make it very difficult for people to actually use gold as a real money, as a way to actually transact. And I think that was, for a while in my mind, that was sort of the goal. It was, okay, we got to get back to this gold standard. And I think now it's unrealistic, and you can't fix the problems of today by just looking to the past. And I think that if you're just looking to what used to work or what worked for a time, well, there's a reason why it didn't continue to work, right? I mean, if the gold standard was perfect, then we would still be on it, but we're not, and we're not because governments came along and they said, well, you're going to give us your gold, and if you don't, we're going to lock you up. I mean, it was illegal to hold more than, I think, an ounce of gold from 1933 into the 60s, I think mid 60s. So yeah, it's a legacy, and I think it's interesting because there's a huge contingent of sort of the gold bug, whatever you want to call kind of demographic that is slowly turning toward Bitcoin, and I think they will continue to make that move slowly, but I think it will happen. And I think, actually, back to your original question about the price, I think it's very possible that a lot of the demand for gold is going to start funneling into Bitcoin. And it's arguable, even with what we've just seen with Greece, that Bitcoin is starting to become, the sort of safe haven crisis kind of currency. Maybe there's something to that even today, although I think, 10 years from now, it won't even be a question. So yeah, I still like gold. I mean, I still own some precious metals. There are some benefits. You could argue, well, if the entire grid gets knocked out, Bitcoin would be knocked out or something crazy like that. So there are a few instances where you could argue that maybe it would be good to have some precious metals. It's diversification. I don't think that's a horrible thing. So I'm definitely not opposed to people owning some, but I see a lot more potential in Bitcoin. So that's why I've moved my focus.
Yeah, I know it's outrageous to think about it, but at face value, if you just look at things, I mean, Bitcoin really does have a lot of the same benefits as gold, the same properties. And it's also all that extra stuff, like you mentioned, it's online and everything. So it's outrageous to think about, but there is some decent reasoning behind the idea that maybe it could overtake gold and just leave gold in the dust. And I mean, I'm not anywhere ready to sell all my silver or anything. I agree on the diversification point too. But yeah, it's pretty crazy to think just how much more convenient really it is to use Bitcoin than gold. So
yeah, I mean, if you're comparing precious metals to fiat currency, I think if those are the only two constants, I'm going to own some precious metals. But when you throw Bitcoin in the mix, it really changes the whole landscape.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you a whole lot for joining us. Can you share how people can contact you, how they should check out your website, how they should get signed up? I don't know if you have a Twitter handle or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. The website is COINCUBE.io. So it's open. We're in beta, but it's public beta. People can check it out, try it out. Love feedback. We have a lot of work to do still, but the core of the web app is working, and we're real proud of it. We'll also be happy to talk with developers, people in business development, marketing. If you've got something that you think could be a benefit or mutually beneficial, reach out. My email is robert@coincube.io. And we're a little bit early for this, but we also will be looking for some investment into CoinCube in the future as well. So if you're an angel or seed investor and you have any interest, we really want to build this into the number one algorithmic trading platform that people use with cryptocurrencies. And I think we were at kind of up to a great start here. So just love to interface and connect with people, and yeah, that's it.
All right. Yeah, definitely. I hope people are interested, and I hope they take the time to just see what it's all about. So this was Robert Allen, the founder of CoinCube.io. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thanks, Tim, John, and Daniel. Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Robert.
Yeah, thank you.
Join the club, join the club, join the Bitcoin Talk Club.
A new forum sensation is coming to a computer near you. A site that adapts to its users and tailors to altcoins. Are you a coin developer looking for a home? Look no further than the club. Have your own section and moderate it yourself. They're looking for members to help build the club into a one-stop resource for everyone's needs. They're looking for you at bitcointalk.club.
Join the club, join the club, join the Bitcoin Talk Club.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. This is Daniel Brown again on the UME and BTC podcast. I am here with another awesome guest. This is Stefan. He is a protocol architect for Trest and Trestor, which they kind of work together. And so, Stefan, thanks a lot for joining us today.
I enjoy being here.
I'm going to start with the pretty simple question. Just tell us about Trest and Trestor. What are they?
So Trestor is a non-profit foundation that was founded by an Indian guy who immigrated to Canada, Kunal Dixit, in order to create a cryptocurrency. A little bit inspired by Bitcoin, but different in many ways. And one of the main goals is to make it accessible for people who don't have access to bank accounts, for example.
Okay.
To use it as an everyday payment system as an alternative to cash.
Yeah, that's really cool. So we covered this probably 2 or 3 weeks ago on our live show. We were covering some news about Cameroon basically testing out their own cryptocurrency, and that was Trest, correct?
Yes.
So yeah, can you tell us then any specifics about Trest, how it works, how it's like Bitcoin, anything that's really different? What makes it special?
So first of all, we call the network Trestor, and the coins are called Trests.
Okay.
And the Trestor network works pretty much like all the other cryptocurrencies in the sense that users have a wallet and users have their own private keys saved in their wallet, and they use their private and public keys in order to exchange money. The big difference between Trest and previous cryptocurrencies is the way the network works. Like how the transactions are collected to a ledger and how they are processed. And the idea with Trestor is to not have mining, because we think mining is a big waste of resources. We came up with a new idea, which we call, we don't really have a name for it. So our network consists of basically 3 types of nodes. The first type is the users who have normal wallets. So we call these nodes wallets. And then we have validator nodes. Validator nodes play pretty much the same role that miners play in Bitcoin. They collect transactions and they assemble them to a ledger. And then we have a third kind of node. Those are forwarding nodes. They act the same way like validator nodes, but they don't take part in the processing themselves. They can be compared to a full network client that is not mining in Bitcoin. So they also have a full copy of the ledger and help clients like wallets to get information about accounts, but they don't process transactions themselves. So, and the way our validators work is that validators are servers run by different institutions, for example, universities, and they collect transactions and then they vote on them. Instead of mining, they vote. Each validator has one voice.
Okay.
So the critical problem with that is, how do we prevent attackers from setting up many validators? Because that's the whole problem. Otherwise, they could easily get majorities and influence the voting in a bad way. So the idea is we require for a validator to have a certain deposit in Trests. And these deposit accounts are like normal accounts, and the public key of those accounts can be used to sign ballots they are voting on.
Okay. Is there that deposit that they make, can they get that back if they stop being a node, or is that an upfront payment?
No, they can get it back.
Okay, and are there any other like barriers to entry? I mean, do you kind of have to be approved or anything, or is it just you make the deposit and you can become a what kind of node was that again? To
Validator.
Validator. Okay, cool. And that's all you have to do is put up this deposit, or is there anything else?
No, first of all, you only have to have a deposit. So that makes the protocol really decentralized. Anybody can set up a node. But the idea is to get the network started. The Trestor Foundation wants to provide some institutions who are willing to run a node with a deposit in order to run one. For example, Trestor Foundation could give Trests for free to universities and they could run a node. Like they voluntarily run Tor nodes in order to support the network.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, like you say, the free Trestor that the foundation can give out, do they have to initially get those from the network, or can they issue them?
No, the coins, the Trests are pre-mined. In the beginning, they are in control of the Trestor Foundation.
Right now, is there only one Trest, basically, and the foundation runs it, or is it something that's open source and different communities or groups or whatever could try it out and create their own version of Trest?
Right now, we are not finished with the decentralized protocol. This is under heavy development, but it is open sourced. We have released lots of it as open source, and the plan is to release all of it soon. But that's work in progress.
Okay. I want to ask about incentive. I mean, that's the big thing with mining
Yes.
is you do it, you support the network because you get paid a little bit. Is there a similar system in Trest? Do you get a reward whenever you validate, whenever you vote?
No, that's another major difference to Bitcoin. You get no reward. But there's not a big problem with that because the work with Bitcoin mining that you do is mostly the mining. The validation, like the processing of transactions, checking for their validity, checking whether there's enough money to support them, that's not really much work.
Okay.
The costly thing about mining is the mining itself. And because of the fact that we don't have any mining, running a Trester node is quite cheap in computational resources.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And the idea is to have it like Tor nodes is really a good example because there's no benefit for yourself, like no reward for running a Tor node, but you're supporting a network that helps people in other countries to use the internet anonymously. And the same would be the case for Trester, where the idea is you can run a node. It doesn't cost much in terms of computational power, but you can help, for example, fuel a network that helps people in underbanked countries, like in third world countries, in developing countries, to have an efficient payment system that has much more conveniences than cash.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that's a huge part of crypto is just plain convenience and accessibility and things like that. So I think that's great. I'm a little fascinated by the incentive thing too. It's interesting that there is none, and it'll be interesting to see if it plays out and how much it plays out. I mean, it's definitely a huge benefit because we've talked about that recently, how mining is extremely expensive. I think the numbers at the moment are something like $7 per transaction is put into mining, and that's a whole lot of money. So it's an interesting concept to see you kind of remove the mining aspect of it, and I don't know, we'll just have to see how it works out.
Yes.
So I'm going to back up a little bit to the idea of the different kinds of nodes. Just out of curiosity, is it possible to run two different nodes or maybe even all three nodes at once? And is there any benefit to doing that, or how does that work?
Yes, there's some benefits. For example, if you have your own forwarding and validator node and you want to run your own wallet, for example, if you are a big commercial player, then you have easy access to all the accounts. If you have just a wallet in the sense of an Android app, then you will not want to have the full copy of the full ledger on your phone. It's the same with Bitcoin. People don't have a full copy of the ledger on their Android wallet. So then you have to ask servers all the time if you want to know any account balances or something like that. So you can get a lot more efficiency if you have your own copy.
Is there, you mentioned the Android wallet. Can you tell me if that exists yet? And also just development as a whole. How far has development come and what kind of things do you have planned in the near future?
We already have an Android wallet and also an iOS wallet. The problem with the iOS wallet is that it hasn't been approved to be added to the Apple Store, to the App Store yet. So you can actually use it already, but at the moment you cannot set up your own validator node because that is not finished.
Yeah, we like to harass Apple a lot for their strict verification measures and stuff like that. And we love how Android is a whole lot more accessible, so that's interesting.
Yes, it's also interesting how you get a different excuse for why they are not why they are not including it every time, a different one.
Yeah, they can be pretty crazy. I want to change gears a little bit and just ask about kind of your personal history in the crypto space. I don't know, can you tell me how you found it, how you got started, and Trest in general, how did that kind of come about, and how did you find Trest?
I myself studied computer science at the university, and after I finished, I started working there as a teacher in cryptography. And while I was teacher and researcher, and in that time, I did some research that was related to Bitcoin. And actually, the Trester Foundation, or people from the Trester Foundation, found some of my research and asked me whether I want to work with them.
What kind of research were you doing?
I was doing research about an attack on ECDSA, that's the signature algorithm used in Bitcoin. This is basically ECDSA is short for elliptic curve digital signature algorithm, and that is an extension of a previous signature algorithm that has been around for more than 20 years, which is called DSA. The DSA algorithm doesn't work with elliptic curves, but with prime numbers. So when I was researching this algorithm, I found an attack that was found by some researchers 20 years ago for the old algorithm. And then I checked whether you can use the same attack on the new one. And it turned out that you can. Yeah.
So that's interesting. Do you think, does that pose any risk to Bitcoin, or I'm sure there's hundreds of things out there that use this kind of encryption. Do you think there's some risk out there that it could be exploited?
Yes, but not immediate. So there's no immediate risk for normal Bitcoin users, but the attack tells you something about some properties of the algorithm. The attack was about how, for example, a Bitcoin wallet could hide private keys of your wallet inside a transaction without you being able to detect it.
Interesting.
You can actually find it online if you Google for it. Do you have a link collection with your podcast? I can give you a link.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll put the link in the show notes for all our listeners. That's kind of interesting. I'm a computer scientist as well, so that kind of stuff is fascinating to me. So I'll definitely be looking into that more just for fun, really. So just to see what it's all about. Awesome. Well, hey, I have an interesting question before we wrap up. This is something we like to do with all of our guests, just for fun also, really. I want to know if you have some kind of interesting personal story in the crypto space. I mean, this research was kind of cool enough, but we can get another one out of you if you have one. Really, anything goes here. If you met somebody awesome, if you saw how crypto can change the world firsthand, are there any really interesting stories that you have from your time in Bitcoin and in crypto?
That's a good question. Actually, I was always, from the beginning, very interested in Bitcoin, in the technology, but I didn't have many. I didn't buy many, and I didn't speculate on the price or anything like that. But I think I bought about 2 or 3 Bitcoins very early for a few dollars, just in order to play around, in order to send it from one wallet to another, and then the price skyrocketed. So it was really crazy.
Yeah, I mean, we always say that Bitcoin's not all about the price. Of course not. There's a million more things that are awesome about Bitcoin than just the price. But it's still really cool to make a little bit of money when it happens.
Yes.
So that's great. Well, hey, can you tell us how to get involved, how to connect with Trest and Trestor? Where should people be looking? A website, a Twitter handle? How can people connect?
I think the best way would be to go to our website, which is trestor.org, and there are email addresses for all the people from the team. So if you are more interested in app design, you can contact the app guys. If you are more interested in the network technology, you can contact me. Yes. Okay.
Are you hiring people? Are you looking for partners, promoters, anything like that? What kind of people should be reaching out to you?
Everybody who's interested.
Awesome.
Yeah, can ask any question. Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, we definitely hope people will do that. Well, hey, I want to thank you very much for joining us. This was a really interesting conversation, and it's great to learn more about Trest because we covered it before and we just didn't know a whole lot about it. So this was Stefan, a protocol architect for the new cryptocurrency. Thanks again for joining us today.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to episode 80. All of the music in today's show was from John Stewart. Remember to check out this week's show notes at btc.com and leave us a comment. We'll see you live next Wednesday and for another regular show on Thursday.